Live from Lothal. Good morning, Lothal. It's the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Good Morning Lothal, the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast. I'm Pete Salas, along with
Rolando Zamora.
How are we doing, Rolly?
I'm good. I'm getting over COVID, but not going to sacrifice the podcast just because I'm sick from COVID.
Absolutely. Well, hey, man, I didn't think you were going to say it on air, but yeah, I'm really glad to hear that you're feeling okay and you're feeling better. I mean, it didn't hit you very hard at all, right?
I mean, it kind of did there at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
You know, thankfully I'm vaccinated and such, so I do feel like I got like a good amount of the symptoms. They just were nothing ever was anything crazy. And even better news is we didn't end up passing it on to everybody else. It was kind of me and a few other friends that got it. We kind of figured out when it happened. Okay. But like I said, the symptoms didn't come out till a couple of days after that. And thankfully, between then and then, it didn't pass on to anybody else. So,
well, all good news. And you are a trooper because we're here, we're recording less than a week later. So that's
we're not going to miss this just because of, something like that. As major as it is. No, of course. But thanks to everybody out there that, texted me, called me to check up on me. Appreciate you guys so much.
Yes. I literally couldn't do the show without you, so I'm really glad that you're feeling okay.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. So, as I said in the opening, this is the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast, where we rewatch Star Wars Rebels episode by episode. This week's episode is episode 8. It's called Empire Day. But before we get to that, let's check on what's happening around the galaxy.
Let's see what's happening this week in Star Wars.
So, a lot of good stuff happening this week in Star Wars. First and foremost, the priority. We are less than a week from Kenobi and Star Wars Celebration at that. So, I am extremely excited to finally watch that. That's going to be something that as soon as I wake up on Friday. That's the priority.
Absolutely. Do you have any idea what time it drops?
I'm sure it drops at 2 a.m. Which is midnight in California. I know we're in Texas, but that seems to be how typically everything drops. As much as I would love to stay up for that, that's probably not going to happen. But I think that will be like a wake up at 5, 6 in the morning, watch it on my phone, still in bed, like half asleep.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then rewatch it a few more times during the day. Yep.
Exactly. So really excited for that, and also extremely jealous but happy for all the fans that are going to make it out to Celebration in California. I know that's going on at the end of the week. And then other stuff in Star Wars is we actually are celebrating the 20th anniversary of Attack of the Clones. That debuted on May 16th, 2002. For as much flack as that film may get, Clone Wars doesn't exist without Attack of the Clones, and I can't say Rebels doesn't exist either because of Clone Wars. So
Absolutely.
Actually pretty proud of that movie despite how few times I watch it.
No, of course. I mean, I just said it like either a week or two ago when I watched it. Like it really, I did gain a new appreciation for it. So you're absolutely right. I mean, I really think that, the main 3 original trilogy came out, and if it wasn't for the fans still getting hyped about the prequels, as hit or miss or as polarizing as they may be with a lot of the fan base, regardless, it still drew a huge crowd, huge numbers to the theaters, and that is what catapulted the next 20 years of Star Wars fandom. So yeah, Clone Wars and Rebels would not happen without the prequels.
Oh yeah, man. And we were just talking about it too. Kenobi doesn't exist without Attack of the Clones. Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor right there. So
no doubt.
It's funny how much new product that film is segueing into 20 years later.
Right.
So also we have a few birthdays to celebrate. We had Timothy Oliphant. He's 54 years old. His birthday was on May 20th, and Mando fans will know him as Cobb
guy. I love that guy in everything he's in. You know what I just watched yesterday with my wife, and it's surprising because after all these years, she's still finding out things about me and vice versa. I've never seen the movie Rango. Okay. Now he came out as I didn't know he was going to come out, and he kind of voices like a Clint Eastwood type. So it's like I knew the voice the minute I heard it, and I'm like, I love that guy. I'm not too proud to say I have a genuine man crush on that guy because he is awesome in everything. I loved Justified. I obviously love him in Mandalorian. He's in what was that? The Deadwood. Everything he's in, he always plays an excellent. He looks right in the hat. I guess let's put it that way. So
I always remember him from that movie, The Girl Next Door. Do you remember that one?
Yes, I do. That was hilarious.
Yeah, he had like some really funny, like awesome lines that still stick in my head from that movie.
Right.
So we're also celebrating the late Peter Mayhew's birthday. He would have been 78 years old on May 19th. Star Wars fans will know him as the famous actor for Chewbacca. And then last but not least, certainly with regards to this podcast, Tia Sircar, who voices Sabine. She's 40 years old as of May 16th. I think I've mentioned this in our group chat, but I always find it funny. Every so often they show that movie, The Internship, on HBO. The one with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. They end up working at Google.
Oh, yes.
Well, yeah, Tia Sircar is actually one of like their teammates in that movie, and she's like the geeky Star Wars fanatic. She's into like Star Wars cosplay and all this stuff. So yeah, there's a super funny scene where she's talking about like cosplaying Leia, and I think she tells Owen Wilson like you could be Han Solo and Vince Vaughn could be Chewbacca, and then like flash. I don't remember, that movie came out like 2012, 2013, sometime around that point.
It was quite a while ago.
Yeah, every time I watch that movie and see that scene, I'm like, I don't even think she realized that she was going to be part of the Star Wars universe when she was acting that out.
She was what's it called? Like she put it out there. The vision or the
manifested it.
She manifested it. That's what she did. So absolutely, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super fun. I always get a kick out of that though. And Sabine ends up being one of my favorite Star Wars characters just because of this show. I really love this show so much. So a lot of the characters in Rebels are truly indeed some of my favorites in Star Wars.
Well, now that you mentioned favorites, before we get to that, I just wanted to remind everybody to please like, share, and subscribe us. I should have said that earlier in the episode, but it never hurts to ask. So please like, share, and subscribe. So anyway, since you mentioned your favorite Star Wars characters, I was going to ask you, rank your top 3, or what are your top 3 Star Wars characters?
Oh man. I feel like this is a question that gets adjusted every single time like some new Star Wars product comes out.
Right.
Man, if I really had to rank top 3 in general characters, I'd probably have to spend some time on that. Okay. I know I've always had this idea in my mind of what are my top 3 Jedi. So I'm going to do top 3 Jedi if you don't mind, Pete.
No,
in my opinion, rather.
Absolutely.
All right. So my favorite Jedi is definitely Ahsoka Tano. This is a Jedi that like I said in last week's episode, when she first came out in the Clone Wars film, I was just like, who is this and why are we getting her? We don't need this. This is it's a bit much. But sure enough, like she evolved. You get to see that character evolve through that show, through the animated shows, and you learn so much about her. You see her grow up right before your very eyes, and sure enough, like I said, she went from 0 to hero. She's my favorite character, period. Not just favorite Jedi. So, and I know that there's a lot of fans out there that they consider her favorite also. And I think a big part of that for me is like she walks away from the Jedi at the end of the Clone Wars. So she starts having this realization that the Jedi aren't all what they're, talked up to be.
Right. She's
starting to think for herself, and you're going to see that that similarity in my next 2 favorite characters. My second favorite character, really, really hard to say he's not my favorite. He's really neck and neck with Ahsoka, and it's Kanan Jarrus. I know we're in the first season of Rebels, and so I don't want to give away too much, but you're going to start to see a lot of things of Kanan that Kanan has to walk his own path because there is no Jedi Council. And a lot of the stuff that Kanan ends up doing, which you can kind of see early on in the relationship that he has with Hera, it doesn't sit with the ideals of the Jedi, but he's alone. Who's to tell him otherwise that he can't do it? And what you end up learning is, hey, the Jedi didn't have it all right. Kanan very much walks his own path. He does what he in his heart he feels is right, and there is no consequences for it.
Right. So
it's a really awesome character. I can't wait to get through this series with the new listeners out there and really see the development of Kanan. Easily hard to give him silver on that one, but he could easily be my favorite character. So
it's like 1 and 1A basically.
Yeah, 1A and 1B, and then close in 3rd place, and he might only be in 3rd because you don't see him on screen much, is Qui-Gon Jinn. So Qui-Gon is a favorite of mine, again, similar to the other two, because Qui-Gon, as you can tell in the Phantom Menace, he's also walking his own path. He believes in the Chosen One.
Yes.
But Qui-Gon is a master who doesn't sit on the council because he doesn't believe in everything, that the Jedi are doing. And you can see a prime example of that is, he takes Anakin to go before the council to see if they'll accept him, and they say no. Well, Qui-Gon basically says, well, hey, I'm going to train him anyways. And then what ends up happening is Obi-Wan, such a celebrated character, when Qui-Gon dies, instead of just easily siding with the council, he goes with Qui-Gon's wishes, and he's going to train Anakin nonetheless.
Right.
So those are all my top three because, again, they share the common quality of these are Jedi that go against the code, but they go against the code for their own reasons, and they turn out to be good reasons.
Oh, that's.
What about yourself, Pete?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's Jar Jar, Jar Jar, and Jar Jar. Absolutely. I'm just
not
kidding.
Enough Jar Jar.
There is not enough Jar Jar in any of the movies for my taste. But no, in my three favorites, and I cannot rank them because I like their stories for multiple reasons. So I'm going to go with the Master Jedi, Master Yoda, would be one of my favorites because it's hard to, how do I say this? For as little screen time as he had in the original trilogy, he had this footprint. And I go back to the original trilogy because, of course, that's what I grew up on. That's from my childhood. And Master Yoda was one of these mythical figures that just kind of, it was, he was the master. He was the wise man sitting on top of the mountain that, people would go and seek counsel from, that type of thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the Clone Wars that we really got to see more of how much of a badass he still is, even in his old age. And so it was, it's funny because I first saw him in the original trilogy, and going back to Clone Wars, that's really when he became one of my favorite characters, which was strange if you want to put it that way, because again, it's a cartoon. But I also hesitate to say that because a lot of people judge these as they're just cartoons, but it adds so much more to a character that I met when I was a child to revisit it and see it in my late 20s. 20 years later, basically, he'll always be on one of my top three, I guess, since we're making a top three list. But yeah, for different reasons, another one of my favorite became, again, because of the Clone Wars, Darth Maul. Now, Darth Maul came out in Phantom Menace, and just time out, he was the Phantom Menace, right? Is that who they were referring to, or what? Who was the Phantom Menace?
I've always seen it as Darth Maul. I hope it's not one of those Return of the Jedi discussions where some people thought it was Luke, but I always perceived it to be Anakin.
Okay.
So if somebody out there is listening and you want to correct me and you already know that the Phantom Menace is actually Darth Sidious and not Darth Maul, by all means, please drop it in our comments and let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to actually look into that myself, but I've always perceived it to be Darth Maul.
Yeah, no, I know I put you on the spot sometimes with these, but it just came to me right now. I've always thought it was Darth Maul because in the trailers or whatever, the teasers, he was built up to be the main baddie of the Phantom Menace, of the first one. So I just figured that he was. But regardless, he came out in the first movie and he had this really cool, just menacing, the red and the black face and the little horns and everything. He just looked like a total badass, but he didn't do much in the Phantom Menace. Yes, there's that epic duel at the end of the movie with the three-way lightsaber fight scene, which is iconic. It's epic. I'm not going to take anything away from it. But then he goes and dies. One of your favorites goes and chops him in half, and then he's gone, presumably forever.
Correction. He stabbed one of my favorites first.
That's true. So, that is true.
Yeah, Obi-Wan, his Padawan, proceeded to just return the favor and split him in half.
I stand corrected. Obi-Wan's the one that cut him in half. But either way, point being is he was built up as this major badass, and then he does a couple of cool little flippy flops, and then he gets cut in half and he's gone. So I didn't think about him again until many years later, much like with Yoda. That is why these animated series are so important, to get an overall aspect and an overall scope of this storyline, because I love a good revenge story. It's like a John Wick type of movie. I love a good revenge flick, and at its core, Darth Maul's story is that of revenge. He hates Obi-Wan Kenobi, justifiably so. Like you said, he just cut him in half and whatnot, but that is what was fueling him. And I won't go too much into it for those who haven't seen the Clone Wars, but in those later seasons, spoiler alert, he does show up again in the Clone Wars animated series. But my God, like, I could not have scripted a better story for him, for someone who just is driven insane with revenge and hatred over one person, and devoting his life to literally not dying, like, keeping himself alive, just fueled by revenge. Like, that is just, it's poetic for me.
And for, just sorry to interrupt you, Pete,
no,
but for Ray, just talking about Ray Park, who played Darth Maul, even though he had like one line in The Phantom Menace, I definitely can't dismiss the fact that they chose him as the actor. He, of course, did all the stunt work for Darth Maul, but the reason I bring that up too is Sam Witwer. He did the voice acting for Maul in the animated series, who did a phenomenal job. But also that final duel that he has with Ahsoka in the Siege of Mandalore arc, the very last sequence of Clone Wars.
Yes.
So that duel, even though it was animated, that was Ray Park doing the moves for Darth Maul. So
I saw a featurette on that. That was pretty. That was pretty amazing. That was
so he's just like, that character is like so important and such a huge fan favorite, and that's part of the reason that he was brought back. But aside from just bringing him back, they did a hell of a job, showing that revenge arc that you're speaking of. Yes.
And again, I can't rank them who's number one, who's number two, who's number three, doesn't matter to me. They're all interchangeable, but it's got to be Darth Vader / Anakin Skywalker.
I was hoping you were going to say that, because if neither of us said Vader, I think we would have gotten some severe backlash.
No, absolutely. And like I said in the past, I am a Sith supporter. So yes, Vader / Anakin Skywalker has to be. He's probably my favorite. I'm just going to say it right now for the sake of argument, for the sake of this segment. Yes, and that's also why I went back to watch the prequels, because they give so much. Again, the Clone Wars gives so much backstory to what led him to become Darth Vader. It is just the fact that this little boy was just born into so much suffering, just so much. He had a horrible life since birth, but he tried to make the best of it. He tried to enjoy his time, living as a slave with his mother. And then he got plucked out of his existence to go train with these Jedis, and got given the hope that he was somebody special, like his mother always told him, like he always probably felt in the back of his head, only to be told by the people that he respects the most. Basically, how do I put this? Like, people that he looked up to is putting it mildly, but these godlike figures in his life, who all knowing, all sensing people, telling him that no, unfortunately, you are not as special as everyone made you feel like you were your entire life. Again, I know why they did it, because they sensed that there was something else inside him. I get that, but it's just that up and down of his entire life, of like high highs and low lows, and then to go on and feel the anger just boil up, like the fear turned into anger and hatred, and it just, I don't know, man. It was just one of those things that I'm rambling here, so save me if you can.
I don't know. I mean, we're getting into some deep conversation here, because all the same reasons that you're talking about Anakin's rejection and his path that leads him down the dark side. I just gave you 3 examples of Jedi that I like because they walked their own path. Like, what would have happened if Anakin was allowed to keep his attachment to his mother,
right?
Would it have necessarily gone bad? No. And I think, and like I said, this is part of the reasons why I like these other characters, because Kanan Jarrus has emotional attachment to Hera.
Right.
The whole way through, and it doesn't weaken him. It strengthens him. His relationship to him being like a father figure to this team. He's emotionally bonded with every single one, and that's not a weakness, it's a strength. So you can make the same argument for Anakin, who was not given, those luxuries because the Jedi Council forbade it. Right.
So yeah, I mean, that it's all around just a beautiful, horrific, sad, depressing story that's all you could ask for as far as storytelling, as far as a well-rounded character, to go from this little boy to this angry young man to this monster, basically this more machine than man monster. You can track it. You can track his entire decline. And he hands down will be probably my favorite character in Star Wars of all time.
Yeah, definitely. And just a word of thought to everybody, all our listeners out there. We'd like to hear from you too. So in our comments, YouTube, whatever, drop us a comment and tell us who are your 3 favorite Star Wars characters and why. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Send us a comment, like you said, on YouTube or on any of our social media platforms. All right, Rolly. So let's get back to what we're all here for, which is the rewatching of Star Wars Rebels. Yes, Empire Day. Hit us with a synopsis. You gotta
say it with celebration as a Sith
Empire Day. Huzzah! So hit us with a synopsis.
So in this episode, the Galactic Empire is celebrating Empire Day for the 15th anniversary of the Emperor's rise to power. The rebels take advantage of this day and destroy an experimental new TIE fighter, leading the Imperials to hunt for them once again. While on the run, they discover a Rhodian technician named Sibo, who knows vital information about the Empire, as well as the fate of Ezra's parents.
All right, so before we get to the breaking down the episode, there was a trivia note that I saw listed under this episode, and this is the first episode to take place in 4BBY. Do you have any idea what 4BBY means?
Yeah, so 4BBY means that it took place 4 years before the Battle of Yavin. So I know a lot of viewers out there might be wondering, where does Rebels take place in the grand scheme of the original trilogy, because clearly it takes place during the original trilogy. So yeah, this would actually be 4 years before the Death Star is destroyed, the first Death Star.
Okay, so the Battle of Yavin is the I guess New Hope, right? That's episode.
Yes, A New Hope.
Episode 4. Okay, got it. I just wanted to know. So this is 4 years before A New Hope, right?
Yeah, so even though visually I'm in the Yavin Rebel base for our viewers out there,
Gotcha.
This is actually taking place 4 years before the Battle of Yavin.
All right, got it. All right. All right, let's do this. So the episode starts with another shot of Kanan and Ezra training for more Jedi training, obviously. And I think this is the first time. Is this the first time we see a Lothcat, or?
I think we've seen them like running around, but I think this is like the first time they actually mention them by name, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So it's like a comedic moment where a Lothcat, he tosses a rock with the idea, Kanan does, with the idea of Ezra being able to control it and control its movement or whatnot, and ends up flying into some bushes, and out jumps a Lothcat that attacks Ezra. But it's all to set up, like, it's kind of to give a reason for Ezra to be off his game. There's a reason why he's not into his training on that day. And what is that reason?
Because it's Empire Day. Ezra, every Empire Day, as we come to find out later in the episode, he thinks of his parents. And the reason he thinks of his parents is because Empire Day is also Ezra's birthday.
Is this the first time Empire Day is mentioned in all of Star Wars?
Oh yeah, definitely. I know I read the Ahsoka book like after Rebels came out, and the book did come out after Rebels. They mentioned Empire Day in there also, but I'm pretty certain this is the first time Empire Day has ever been mentioned.
Right. So in that same breath, mentioning what day it is, Ezra also mentions that he gives allusions that there's something deeper there. It's connected to his past. As they're walking back to, the ship, I suppose, they see some TIE fighters flying out pretty far out.
Yeah. So Ezra and Kanan, they start chasing these TIE fighters back to where they're going to, and they're heading back towards the city. And as we find out, Ezra and Kanan walk into a cantina where the rest of the Ghost crew is hanging out, and the pilots from these TIE fighters walk in too. And the first thing they do is one of them goes to the bartender and he's like, "You should be playing the Imperial HoloNet news. It has to be playing all the time." So the bartender's like, "Well, nobody ever requests it, so that's why we'll play it."
Yep.
He's like, "Well, it needs to be playing all the time. That's the Imperial order." So the guy puts it on, and you kind of figure out what's going on. They're specifically looking for a Rodian. Anybody who's unfamiliar with Rodians, that is the race that Greedo plays in A New Hope, the guy that Han shoots first, or Greedo shoots first, whichever department you're a believer in.
Han shot first.
Yeah. Yes, Han shot first. Wait, I don't know. Not important right now. So they're looking for a Rodian, goes by the name of Sibo. They approach a Rodian there in that cantina. It's not him. Whatever, right? So once the bartender puts on the HoloNet news, of course, they start they start speaking of the celebration that's going to happen for the 15th annual Empire Day Parade. And what's really cool about that scene is they show the Emperor, but he's not like all, whatchamacallit?
Yeah, like disfigured
from the lightning. So he's kind of still putting on this sham charade, I don't know, whatever you call it,
right? Propaganda. Of
him
basically
looking like the same, propaganda, that he's still the same looking Supreme Chancellor from before he got disfigured with this fight with Mace Windu. Right. So I thought that was actually really interesting when they showed that. So anyways, they're talking about it. They're announcing that a parade is going to be thrown by Governor Price, who we do get introduced to later in Rebels. She doesn't come out in this episode. Okay. And more specifically, during that feed, it gets interrupted from Senator Travis. He's the senator that was in exile from the previous episode with the Luminara rescue attempt. And he basically comes on and he's telling everybody to boycott all the celebrations.
I guess part of the boycott is he's encouraging anybody who is against the Empire to just kind of, if not outright boycott it and not attend the parade, then
go protest it.
Wink, wink. Do what you can to disrupt it.
Yeah, exactly. So I believe the Ghost crew already had a plan. That's how it seems like it's implied by Kanan.
Right.
But yeah, because Ezra proceeds to tell the team, well, he's not going to participate in the plan. And he basically goes back to his home that we saw in the first episode of Rebels, to be alone as he thinks of his parents. And what's really cool about this scene is this is the first time that we start getting voice flashbacks of Ezra's parents. We haven't been introduced to them yet. They're not around, obviously. We know that much. So he starts hearing them tell him when he's younger that they have to stand up for people in need, especially when they're in trouble by the Empire. And from this specific conversation, he remembers who the Empire was looking for at the cantina, Sibo. So he thinks of Sibo, and automatically, with that voice flashback he had of his parents, he knows where to find them. So we flash forward a bit. The teams are ready. They're already readying their plan to disrupt the festivities of Empire Day, and that plan turns out to be that they're going to blow up the advanced TIE starfighter that the Empire is presenting at the Empire Day. We kind of see them at the celebration. Sabine proceeds to create a distraction by creating fireworks that were unplanned.
Yes.
So in the process of everybody celebrating the fireworks, Kanan is setting charges on the TIE fighter, and he proceeds to blow them up, and he's looking for an escape route. And that's kind of around the same time Ezra shows up, and he manages to get him out of there before, he starts being questioned by some more Imperials.
So there's a cool little, what you're talking about when Ezra shows up, he distracts the stormtroopers from, asking him too many questions by calling him his father. So I found that kind of interesting, that we've been talking about the dynamic between the two of a de facto father-son, but in this one, I know he was just as a ruse, but still he called him his dad. So it's just kind of one of those little moments of you really see the bond and how much he does truly feel for how much they feel for each other. But
yeah, so Ezra's kind of taking them. He's like, guys, I know where we can hide out for a bit. Zeb, he's gonna take them through like some ventilation shafts and such, so Zeb doesn't fit being so big.
right.
So Zeb's like, well, I'll rendezvous with Hera at another position at the Ghost. You guys go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And as they're trying to escape, they did encounter Agent Callus, who was looking for Sibo, and he notifies the Grand Inquisitor, who also happens to be there, what's going on, that there's rebels disrupting, the celebration. So I think the Inquisitor, I don't remember which character he recognizes, but right away he's onto them. So now they're not only going to be pursued by the Imperials, they have the Grand Inquisitor on their tail.
Just a quick question. Do you think that Empire Day, obviously it's galaxy wide, but does every planet have their own festivities going on, or is it centralized, like this year we're doing it in Lothal kind of a thing?
I think it's every planet has their own festivities, but obviously it's only going to be the planets that the Empire is in control of. So they're forcing these festivities to happen basically as a way to create more of a following. And also put a damper on people building rebellion, getting more people in their favor. Yes, same thing as propaganda.
Right.
To keep it simple. So Ezra ends up they're hiding into ventilation shafts just until the heat dies down, and then he ends up taking them to what we come to find out is his original childhood house.
Yes.
So they sneak in there. Ezra kind of gives them the lowdown of why they're there, and in the process of them talking, there's a hiding spot that he opens, because again, remember, he says, I know where Sibo is, and sure enough, Sibo is hiding there in the house. And as it turns out, he's hiding there in the house because Sibo is actually an old friend of Ezra's parents.
Okay.
Yeah, so he pulls Sibo out, attempts to kind of try talking to him, but clearly something's wrong with him. He's not all there, and it turns out that Sibo has like this implant on his head, and they're cybernetic circuits. So he kind of has the Empire in control of him, and what ends up happening is he starts spitting out information vital to Imperial fighter deployments on Lothal.
Right.
And come to find out, that's the reason why the Empire is looking for him, because they need to get him to shut up or fix him, what have you, right? Clearly, like, there's a malfunction in the circuitry that they implanted on him. So,
I found that very interesting that they like implanted, or they were basically what was the word you used? They cybernetic circuits.
Yeah, cybernetic circuits
that they to basically mind control them, to basically turn a living organism into more of a droid kind of a thing, instead of just using a droid. Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, why isn't like there a 3PO type droid like with that information in there? But no, that's just the way the Empire handles it.
That's a really good point. It was that same headpiece that Lando's assistant has in The Empire Strikes Back.
What was his name? Was it Lobot or something like that?
I don't remember. That's something I'll have to look into. Anyway, that's one of those characters I'm watching. I'm like, I don't know his name. I'm not thinking about what his name is. Right.
He's the bald guy, right, with the headpiece thing. Okay. Anyway, I just found that interesting that instead of just using a droid, like they messing with this poor Rodian. Anyway, go ahead.
I think it's because he's supposed to be like a technician, so he already has some type of knowledge that they're putting him to use on. And these cybernetic circuits are just meant to enhance his productivity, if I'm not mistaken. So he's a skilled worker, so to say.
Yes.
So they pull him out of this little hideout spot, right? It's like a little bunker inside the house. And Ezra proceeds to go into the bunker while Sabine and Kanan are tending to Sibo. And what was really cool is that bunker turns out to be where Ezra's parents would broadcast radio transmissions to Lothal, speaking out against the Empire. And I mentioned that specifically because that's the namesake of our podcast.
Exactly.
Radio Lothal. That's where I, when we were suggesting names, that's where I thought of the name, is because of Ezra's parents. This show is focuses on Ezra,
right?
So That's what I wanted to go with. I thought, and then you turned it into Good Morning Lothal, which I absolutely loved as soon as you told me that, despite what other people said at the time. They're like, why don't you call it this? I'm like, why don't you watch Rebels?
Yeah. Why don't you shut the hell up? Yeah. No, but that was pretty cool we find out that Ezra's basically he was born to be a rebel, because his parents were already rebelling against the Empire. So that was a nice little touch. Yeah,
definitely. So again, when he's seeing their little radio equipment, we get flashbacks from Ezra's parents talking. And this one was interesting because he actually hears Sibo advising his parents to stop what they're doing because they're only hurting Ezra in the long run. And Ezra's father specifically, I believe, tells Sibo, we're teaching Ezra to stand up for what he believes in, for what's right. Doesn't matter how young he is. So they were doing right by Ezra in their opinion.
Absolutely.
So, after that, the show kind of progresses. The team decides to steal an Imperial troop transport to smuggle Sibo out of the city because clearly, now they have the entire Empire and the Inquisitor looking for them. So they kind of got to get out of there with full force.
Right. He's basically a giant walking USB port that they have to smuggle out of the city to get back into the hands of the Alliance.
Yeah. So the Empire already kind of has like a roadblock set up for them, like the main road that leads out of town. And I think Kanan's driving, and Sabine basically tells him, just don't stop, just plow right through. So sure enough, like Fast and the Furious style, they just kind of plow right through it in there.
Right.
In their Imperial transport. And I think Kallus takes one of the other transports that they blew through, and he begins to chase them. And the Inquisitor, he radios to the Inquisitor that, they're escaping. The Inquisitor's like, just try to slow them down as best you can. I'll get in there with my team of TIE fighters here soon to help you out.
Am I the only one who noticed that Kallus's helmet, his gladiator style helmet, matches his sideburns? It's cut exactly the same way. It's weird. Anyway, that's a visual
it's funny
joke.
that you mentioned the helmet because I would always see that helmet and I would think that's different, but I didn't associate it to a gladiator. Right. Which is cool because he has that bow staff, the bow rifle rather. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it kind of goes hand in hand with that. That's pretty awesome.
Right.
So, they're fighting. It's your typical again, go back to the Fast and Furious. It's a Fast and the Furious fight scene whilst, the cars are, speeding also. Mm-hmm. So during that process, they end up getting away from those troops, but the Ghost swoops in to save the team from Kallus. However, they're still being pursued by the Inquisitor and the TIE Fighter. So the Ghost takes off to space. The Inquisitor's pursuing them. He starts shooting at the Ghost, and sure enough, in the process, before I get to that, I thought it was really cool how Hera tells Chopper, "Hey, I need you to man the guns." So
yeah,
we start getting Chopper just starts shooting down TIE fighters, of course, no questions asked, the murder child that we come to find out that he is.
Right. I mean, because we've seen droids pilot, autopilot a fighter ship in the past in previous movies and whatnot, but we've never actually seen one literally pull the trigger and fire. Yeah, just blasting people.
Hera literally sends him to the gunner position. She didn't ask for anything else. I need your help. And I think he jumps into the Phantom. Yeah, the Phantom's still attached to the Ghost, but he's shooting that cannon, and I think he does shoot one TIE fighter down, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he does. He does, and then he blasts. He's the one that takes out the transport that's following them. He shoots and shoots and shoots, and then they end up flipping and they blow up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Chopper's a badass through and through.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Further proof.
So the Ghost, of course, there's gunfire between the two ships, and sure enough, the Inquisitor does end up shooting the Ghost successfully, and it kind of causes the ship to shake. And during that process, Ezra falls on top of Sibo and coincidentally fixes his circuits just by
bumps it,
bumping into him. And at that moment, Sibo kind of just wakes up out of his trance, so to say, and he's fully aware of what's going on now. And he tells Ezra, "Well, hey, I know what happened to your parents." And unfortunately, that's where the episode just kind of goes black, and it's to be continued.
Yeah, man. I was watching and I'm like, man, there's a lot going on here. like, okay, we're almost done. What's going on? Like, how are they going to tie this up? And then it's just a black screen to be continued. And I'm like, Carabas! Like, man, that I was like, okay, it hooked me. It had me at the edge of my seat all 22 minutes. And, it makes me really want to fast forward to next week to when we do the next one.
Yeah, I think that was like the closest the Inquisitor had gotten to getting the full team, so to say. So
yes.
Yeah.
So that is the end of this episode. Like I said, it sprung up on me. That's how much, how invested I was in it. It was a great episode, I feel. What do you think?
Yeah, a really good episode. The fact that we got introduced to Ezra's backstory, I think it automatically sets up something really good. We're clearly going to find out more information. It might have seemed kind of like whatever with the little Sibo subplot going on, but ultimately it connects to Ezra's parents, and Rebels is ultimately Ezra's show. For as much as I love the entire Ghost crew,
right?
The show focuses on this unknown child with Force powers, and you're going to see him grow up throughout the 4 seasons of Rebels. So
yeah, so it was a good
starter to his background.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, just the fact that his birthday falls on Empire Day, so it's automatically, and the Empire's the reason why he's an orphan. It's just kind of like it's what I was talking about that the Anakin, kind of a thing. It's the writers really know how to craft a really well-rounded tragic character, but with the glimmer of hope that they can become the hero that we all hope them to be. So again, that brings us to the end of this episode. Next episode is called Gathering Forces. What do you think that's about, other than the second half of this story, Roland?
It's the second half of the story.
Okay. Cheap. That's cheap, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
They gave me that to be continued clue, so I'm just going to roll with that.
All right. I'll let you pass on this one.
Hey, that's the beauty of I'm not going to lie, Pete. That's the beauty of the rewatch, too. Sometimes I'm like, I don't remember what happens. And, maybe it's for a good thing, maybe it's for a bad thing.
Right.
But when the episode ends exciting like that, I think it's for a good thing. So I get to rewatch the next episode, even though I've already seen it a couple of times. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what it's about. So it's going to be kind of new for me yet again.
Okay. So as we wrap up, let me say once again to ask to please like, share, and subscribe, and also join us on all our social media platforms. We're at Facebook, we're on Instagram, we are on YouTube, and of course you can find us and archive episodes on radiolothal.com. You can also go and read more about your hosts here and shoot us an email. Let us know what you think. Also, for the traditional podcast listeners, we are on all the platforms that you could possibly think of. Just if you know where to find us, share it with your friends, send them a link, send them a direct download link to our show on any podcast platform that you choose. It would greatly help also for rating us on Apple Podcasts specifically, because when Apple's rating goes up, everyone else kind of follows suit. That's kind of how it works. Any last words you want to add, Rolly, or anything?
I just want to encourage our fans yet again to, by all means, jump into the comments, give us feedback on how we're doing, give us corrections, tell us stuff you want to hear. Maybe we're not mentioning something and you're like, hey, you know what? It'd be really cool if you guys did a segment on this, whatever. This is a Star Wars Rebels podcast, but it is not limited to Rebels, as you can see.
Absolutely not.
So we very much have a lot of fun discussing everything beyond Rebels as well. So jump in, participate, let us know what you want to hear, or give us feedback.
Okay, so then that brings us to the end of this episode of Good Morning Lothal, the unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast. So until next time, I'm Pete Salas along with
Rolando Zamora,
saying, may the Force be with you always. Goodbye from Lothal.